That wasn't a grenade, that was his lunch. That's what Jenkins yelled right before he bit into what looked like a live alien slug wrapped in foil and chucked the rest into the swamp, which promptly exploded in green fire across 2 crack scouts. That was day 1. We'd been knee-deep in this festering bog for less than 6 hours and already down 1 radio, 2 drones, and a third of our patients. Command had given us a clean recon objective: map out hive tunnels, avoid contact, extract clean. Real neat, real sterile. Like they forgot they were sending humans into a jungle that wanted us dead just slightly less than the bugs did. The crack didn't wait. They ambushed us at dawn while we were boiling swamp water and arguing over who stole the last caffeine tab. Thing is, you don't sneak up on a squad that hasn't slept, showered, or shat properly in 3 days. You poke that kind of crazy, and it bites back. One of them jumped Kowalski, tall bastard with 4 blades for arms and a face like a termite nest made of razors. It shrieked like a dial-up modem and went for a headshot. Kowalski just ducked, screamed, "No!" and slammed a trench knife through its lower mandible. Didn't even stop stirring his rehydrated eggs. The rest of us opened up. Bullets didn't do much unless you hit the seams, but we'd learned that during training. One guy tossed a flammable oil pack into the underbrush and lit it with a match. A match. You know what they don't expect? A war fought with low-tech stupidity and pure spite. The cracked panicked. Half of them scattered. The other half tried to circle around. One got within licking distance of Ramirez, who just yanked the carbonized barrel off his rifle and used it like a club. I swear on my discharge papers he was laughing while he did it. We cleared the skirmish in 9 minutes. Jenkins was still eating. That was the moment I knew this wasn't recon anymore. This was war. And we were going to win it with spite, sarcasm, and stupid, improvised violence. 3 days later, we learned the crack didn't breathe oxygen. They filtered atmosphere through a weird internal enzyme system that converted swamp gas into breathable crap. Didn't matter until Ramirez figured out that our thermite rations burned hot enough to turn that enzyme goo into mustard gas. He tested it by accident, of course, like everything in the 3rd Infantry. We were pinned in a cave tunnel, hiding under what smelled like baked fungus and wet socks, trying to patch up Jenkins' leg. He tripped over a bioluminescent vine and swore it bit him. The cracked were outside, 6 or 7 of them, clicking and whistling like a busted air vent. They were getting organized, smarter. Not rushing in. That's when we got nervous. Ramirez, being Ramirez, decided to light up the mood, tossed one of our thermite blocks out the mouth of the tunnel and hit it with his lighter. There was a sound like a balloon full of soup popping in your ear canal and then screaming. Not ours, theirs. 4 of them went down like sacks of bricks, twitching and clutching their faces. The rest bolted, hissing something that smelled like ammonia and fear. Jenkins, bleeding and delirious, looked up and just muttered, "We gassed him with lunch." Mirror? Yeah. From that point on, we started engineering the terrain. Booby-trapped gas pockets, flare mines built out of repurposed ration heaters, and stink bombs using local mushrooms that made the cracked run like scared cats. They had tech, shields, drones, plasma arcs that could melt through reinforced steel. We had body odor, spite, and the ability to weaponize anything. Duct taped 3 flares to a boot and kicked it into a crack patrol. That was the day they started calling us the Fire Ghosts. At least, that's what we assumed. Hard to tell when the language is mostly chemical piss and screaming. Every encounter after that, we chose the terrain. Used the swamp like it owed us money. Ambushes and mud trenches, bait traps made of our old rations, even fake distress beacons that just played heavy metal and static until they wandered into range. We didn't just fight dirty, we fought like humans. No AI, no protocols, just instincts, bad jokes, and unhinged ideas that worked for no good reason. And the cracked started to fear us. You could smell it. It started with a bad map and ended with us squatting in the enemy's basement. Command had sent a drone scout the day before. According to the data, the closest cracked hive was still 12 clicks north. So naturally, when we dropped into a dry gulch for some rest, we landed right on top of one. Kowalski was on watch. I remember hearing him whisper, "Huh, that rock just blinked." Then the ground cracked open like a scab and vomited out a skittering pile of cracked drones. Now, most units would fall back, call for evac, maybe drop some ordnance and run. We ran in. Ramirez threw a thermal canister into the breach, then jumped in right after it. Jenkins screamed, Yo! Yes, in the year 2289, and followed him with a shovel. I don't know what possessed me to follow, but I think it was something between peer pressure and pure homicidal curiosity. The tunnels were alive, pulsing. You could hear them breathe. Organic walls with pulpy veins, and that wet slap sound with every step like we were walking inside a stomach. There were 6 of us inside a hive that probably housed 600 of them. But something was wrong. The hive was mostly empty. Bodies twitching on the ground, weird burn marks near air vents, and the smell of cooked ozone. That's when Jenkins said, "Wait, this is the hive from the thermite test." Yeah, same hive. We didn't just kill some scouts last week. We'd basically dropped a chemical bomb into their nursery. So we did what any rational squad of humans would do. We fortified it and made it ours. We welded shut the tunnels with salvaged gear, planted perimeter claymores made from scrap metal and acid batteries, hung up a hand-painted sign at the entrance, "Welcome to Fort Kickass." We used their own pheromone trails to mislead scouts. Sometimes we'd hear them chittering just outside, confused and panicked, like they couldn't believe we were still here, like we were some kind of sick hallucination they couldn't kill. Meanwhile, Jenkins installed a coffee rig using parts of a broken plasma rifle. We turned their hive into a fob. From there, we started launching raids. Targeted, surgical, mean. Command thought we'd gone rogue. They tried to recall us. We ignored it. This was personal now. We weren't just surviving, we were winning. You know how every squad's got that one guy? Ours was Fitz. Fitz wasn't supposed to be infantry. He was comms, tech, nerdy, quiet, always messing with his translator units and mostly stayed out of the chaos. Until the day he made a crack, scouts surrender. Let me be clear, cracked don't surrender. They fight to the death, melt down their own gear, and spit acid in your eyes if you get too close. But that day, one of them tripped a perimeter alarm outside Fort Kickass, limped in half burnt and wheezing, and instead of finishing it off, Fitz talked to it. "Wait," he shouted, shoving past Ramirez. "I've been working on their pheromone syntax." Everyone froze. The cracked just stood there, mandibles twitching, like it was waiting for someone to kill it. And Fitz started spritzing some kind of custom mixed scent blend into the air from a jury-rigged perfume bottle. Then he said 3 words I'll never forget. "Smell my diplomacy." We were dead silent. The alien actually paused, sniffed, then made this clicking sound that didn't quite sound aggressive anymore. Fitz looked like he'd just won the lottery. "I think it just told him we're the dominant predators now." Kowalski whispered, "Tell him we eat his dead." That moment changed everything. See, the cracked weren't just hive minds. They had internal caste rivalries, politics. Turns out the scout Fitz talked to was from a rival brood. The gas attack had wiped out their queen chamber, so they were disorganized, vulnerable, and pissed. Over the next few days, Fitz kept refining his scent packs, and we started getting visitors, low rankers, injured ones, not looking for a fight, just looking to listen. Fitz would walk out like some deranged alien therapist, spritz a few scents, click some sounds from a speaker, and somehow get them to hand over intel, tunnel maps, patrol routes, even a location for an upcoming brood queen migration. The rest of us, we just watched, dumbfounded, while Fitz slowly became the ambassador of war crimes. He once told one scout, "Your queen's dead. We're your new gods now." And the bug bowed. We stopped asking questions after that. 3 weeks into our swamp deployment, Command finally believed we weren't dead, mostly because we sent them a crate full of cracked antennae and a formal message written in alien blood that read, "You're welcome." That's when they gave us a green light, unofficially, of course. Apparently, higher-ups wanted to observe our unconventional results. Translation, keep doing your war crimes, but don't make us sign off on them. So we made a list. We called it the Queen Killers Club. One rule: you bag a brood queen, you earn your patch. Jenkins made them from shredded cracked banners and our old socks, crude little things stinking of pride and swamp rot. Our first real hunt came 2 nights later. Fitz had sniffed out a pheromone pattern that reeked of regality. High sugar notes, egg pheromones, and a hint of smugness. We tracked it to an underground hatchery dome deep in enemy territory. It wasn't just guarded, it was worshipped. Cracked drones lined the perimeter in total silence, twitching in unison like they were connected to a group chat of murder. We didn't charge in. We waited. Watched. Then Ramirez came up with a plan so insane we had to try it. We hijacked one of the crack's own communication totems, spiky organic towers that emitted pheromones and weird sounds. Fitz rewired it using a gutted translator, 2 batteries, and something he called emotional sabotage. At midnight, we activated it. The totem screeched a mating call for arrival, Queen Cast. Within minutes, the hatchery turned into a civil war. We moved in during the chaos. Smoke, screams, the smell of cooked shell and ion discharge. The queen herself stood twice the height of a human, dripping with some kind of psychic slime, protected by a chitinous crown that looked like a bone cathedral. Kowalski shot her in the face with a flare gun. Didn't kill her, but blinded her just long enough for Jenkins to leap on her back and drive a combat shovel into the soft spot under her thorax. She screamed like a collapsing building and spasmed, crushing 2 of her own guards in the process. We left the message scorched into her throne, property of Fort Kickass. When we got back, we each stitched a new patch onto our gear, queen skull with a boot print on top. Command sent us a single-line reply, do not engage further without authorization. We replied with a squad photo of us flipping the bird in front of a burning hive. We didn't know they could run. The cracked always fought to the last breath, like they'd rather die than retreat. That was the thing we hated and respected about them. Those suicidal bastards just wouldn't quit. Until they did. It happened on patrol. Fitz had picked up movement near one of our perimeter decoys. Old helmets stuck on sticks, rigged with pheromone emitters and crude sound loops of human laughter and gunfire. It was supposed to lure scouts close, then hit them with a directional mine made from repurposed anti-grav plates. Instead, we watched a group of 6 cracked drones stop, assess the scene, and back away. Not charge, not scream, not even spit. They turned around. Holy hell, Ramirez whispered. Did we just become the monsters? He raised his rifle. We've always been the monsters. They're just catching up. It wasn't a fluke. Over the next few days, we saw more signs, crack patrols steering clear of Fort Kickass, abandoned tunnel networks, drones leaving supplies behind rather than risk passing near our routes. Then came the moment that sealed it. We were clearing out a collapsed hive section when we stumbled onto a clutch of cracked juveniles. Normally they'd swarm you, instinctively violent little acid-spitting freaks, but these, they froze. One even hissed, stumbled back, and chirped something that sounded exactly like a warning signal. We just stood there, stunned, watching them scurry away like scared dogs. Jenkins finally broke the silence with, "Guys, I think we're the boogeyman." That night, we painted the walls of our hive with new warnings. Not for us, but for them. Symbols that Fitz claimed roughly translated to, enter and die loudly. We didn't want peace, we wanted reputation. We wanted them to think twice before ever clawing at human soil again, and it worked. They stopped sending patrols. Scout numbers dropped by 60%. We stopped finding ambushes and started finding deserted ground. War had taught us a lot of things, but the most important? If you want peace with aliens who think only strength matters, be the thing they fear in the dark. Eventually, Command realized we weren't just surviving, we were winning. So they did the logical thing, they sent help. Now, when most people think of reinforcements, they picture elite drop troopers, tactical exosuits, maybe a couple drones with snarky AIs. What we got was the 5th Recon Battalion. We heard them before we saw them, marching in cadence, spouting textbook formations, carrying weapons that had probably never seen dirt. Lieutenant Cleanjaw showed up at our hive entrance and immediately gagged from the smell. "This is occupied?" he asked, eyes wide. Ramirez handed him a gas mask and said, "Smells like victory, sir." They set up camp outside the hive, wouldn't go in. Said it was a biohazard. We called them the Bubble Boys. Day 1, they got ambushed by a swarm we'd been baiting for a week, lost 3 guys. We offered them backup. Kowalski even offered a boot with a live grenade duct taped inside. They declined. Day 2, their drone got hacked by crack scouts and started broadcasting our hive's coordinates. Fitz shot it out of the sky with a bolt-action rifle he built from plumbing parts. The lieutenant filed a complaint. Day 3, they tried to liberate our hive. Said we weren't authorized to hold territory, so we locked the doors and cranked up the pheromone emitters to mating aggression just as a cracked patrol was passing by. To this day, I swear that patrol turned away from us and ran straight into the Fifth's perimeter. We didn't hear much from them after that, just static and screaming. The survivors, 3 of them, came knocking 2 days later, armor covered in acid burns and swamp filth, eyes wide with terror. They didn't say anything, just stood there until Ramirez handed them mugs of synth coffee and nodded toward the back. "Welcome to Fort Kickass," he said. "Leave your pride at the door." After that, they stopped marching in formation, they stopped shining their gear, and they started painting their own patches. The 5th Recon died in that jungle. What walked out of it wasn't textbook anymore. They were just like us, and we liked them a hell of a lot better that way. We were deep, real deep, tunneling into the crust after intercepting a pheromone signal that smelled like royal blood and battery acid. The plan was to scout, get intel, maybe tag a queen. Instead, we walked straight into a cracked feasting chamber. Now, if you've never seen one, imagine a church made of ribs, high arches of chitin, walls pulsing with digestive fluid, cracked bodies moving in synchronized prayer-like motions around a giant feeding pit filled with corpses. Some alien, some formerly UDF. We didn't have time to be shocked. They saw us, and we weren't quiet. I dropped my rifle on instinct, trying to grab Jenkins. He'd slipped on some bile. Ramirez opened fire. Kowalski started screaming, bayonet diplomacy, and Fitz, dear God, threw a spoon. Full-on chaos. Inside a space barely wide enough for 2 men shoulder to shoulder, it became a knife fight. Blades clanged on chitin, blood, red, and neon green splashed on the walls. One crack tried to bite through Kowalski's armor. He headbutted it until its mandible snapped. Jenkins stabbed one through the eye with a rusted multi-tool. Ramirez lost his knife, so he fought with a bent rebar pipe he pulled out of the floor. I saw him jab it through an alien's neck and scream, "This is my formal complaint." It wasn't strategy. It wasn't clean. It was a brawl, the kind where you don't breathe. You just swing until something stops moving. And we shouldn't have, but we did. Because while the cracked had numbers, tech, and better biology, we had hate. We had humor. We had 6 hours of sleep in 4 days and the kind of rage only a swamp-induced foot fungus can give you. When the last one went down, the chamber was silent. All we could hear was our own ragged breathing and Fitz's soft voice. They were digesting socks. We burned the entire room, didn't collect samples. That place felt wrong, even for us. But what we did take was one of their ceremonial knives, sutturated, made from queen shell, stained black. We mounted it at Fort Kickass's entrance. Underneath, we painted the words, "You bring blades to us, we bring graves to you." Started with silence. No patrols, no skittering in the dark tunnels, just silence. We didn't trust it. Normally, silence meant something bad was about to eat you, but this was different. This was calculated, controlled, like someone somewhere was holding their breath. That's when Fitz looked up from his improvised comms rig and said, "They're watching us, not attacking, just listening." Ramirez checked the sensors, no motion. Kowalski wiped blood off his bayonet. "Then they're thinking. Bugs don't think, right? We were wrong. The crack do think, not like us, not individual, but like a hive. A net of minds layered in chemical signals and twitch responses. And that net, it had noticed something it didn't like. Us. They started showing up in places we weren't. Their patrols danced around ours. Their hives rerouted their pheromone paths. They began avoiding areas we hadn't even reached yet. Fitz said it's like they're adapting preemptively. Ramirez grunted. Means we're in their head. I leaned back and said it without thinking. We made the hive mind blink. We weren't just a threat anymore. We were an anomaly, something they couldn't predict, couldn't counter with numbers or acid or clever tunnels. So they tried new tricks. One night, we heard human voices in the swamp. Actual voices. Jenkins' voice calling for help. But Jenkins was sitting right next to me, holding a rifle and looking very, very unamused. They were mimicking us. Poorly. We sent a flare into the fog. It landed in a group of crack drones wearing our armor. Painted, bent, worn like trophies. One even had a busted comms unit taped to its chest, repeating a distorted recording of Jenkins saying, "Where's my coffee, assholes?" Fitz muttered, "They're trying psychological warfare." We shot him anyway. After the skirmish, we found crude drawings on their exoskeletons, images of us. The hive mind didn't know how to process us, so it turned to mimicry, to ritual. We weren't just in their head, we were becoming their myth. And we weren't done yet. We weren't supposed to transmit anything. Command had a big shiny policy about radio silence and non-provocative engagement, but after that hive tried mocking us with our own gear, Fitz looked at me and said, "I'm sending a message." Megal alert. No, stop him. He patched into an old comm relay buried in one of the early tunnels, pre-war tech. Analog fallback for emergencies. Rigged it up with some cracked pheromone emitters, piggybacked a signal through the hive's chemical vents, and laced the feed with old Earth radio waves. Then a voice heard, "This is Fort Kickass. You hear us, bugs? We're still alive, still here, and if you're listening, we're not done yet." He let the signal loop. Every 30 minutes, it played over the hive net. Not just audio, but smell, fear scent, burn scent, victory scent, all fused into one high-frequency chemical cocktail. Within hours, we had results. Drones started abandoning forward positions. Scout units detonated their own egg sacs. We intercepted a new pheromone pattern, Fitz, called anxiety clusters. The cracked were communicating in stress symbols, broadcasting confusion, conflicting commands, and worst of all, Rodney. That night, a cracked defector, half-charred, dragging its leg, limped up to Fort Kickass, holding a chunk of its own Queen's crest. It dropped the crest in front of us, knelt, and pointed a claw downward toward the hive core. Kowalski lit a cigar. "Well, damn, looks like they want us to finish the job." We prepped everything. Ammo, explosives, gas canisters, Fitz's scent bombs. Jenkins even sharpened his shovel. The mission wasn't official, but we weren't asking permission. That broadcast, it didn't just taunt them. It started a war inside their minds. And now, we were going to bury that war under 5 tons of high-yield spike. We descended at 0400, just 6 heavily armed lunatics and a defector guide who couldn't talk but made damn good maps out of blood and dirt. The deeper we went, the more things changed. Gone were the organized tunnels and symmetrical hives. This place was chaos. Twisted architecture, scorched walls, signs of infighting. Half-dead drones crawling up walls like junkies in withdrawal. We didn't kill them. Didn't need to. Whatever the broadcast had done, it broke them. The Queen's chamber was buried half a kilometer below surface level. According to Fitz's readings, it was wired into the entire local hive cluster. Central node, heart, brain, ego. Kill it and the whole grid would collapse like a drunken zero-G. Problem? It wasn't unguarded. The moment we breached the inner corridor, we hit resistance. Not drones, not guards. These were elite, taller, fused armor plates, spines along their limbs that hissed as they moved. Kowalski dubbed them prickle bitches. It stuck. They fought like demons, silent, coordinated, relentless. Ramirez lost a finger, didn't flinch, just taped it up and said, "Guess I'm on a diet." Jenkins took a spike to the thigh, ripped it out, bit it in half, and stabbed one of them with the jagged end. I dropped a phosphorus grenade mid-charge, lit the whole corridor in white fire. Their carapaces boiled. The smell was worse than death. It was revenge. We pushed forward, every step a battle. The Queen's chamber was a cathedral of bone and bile. And at its center, she waited. Not monstrous, not screaming. Still. Watching. Like she already knew she'd lost. Fitz stepped forward with the scent bomb in one hand, plasma cutter in the other. I'm about to end this broadcast with a bang. The Queen raised a claw and we lit her up. 3 grenades, 2 thermite packs, 1 dead battery with a vengeance spark that turned the floor into a collapsing firestorm. She didn't scream. She disintegrated. And in the quiet that followed, we heard it from above, miles away. Other hives were collapsing, one death echoing through the net like a mental nuke. The cracked blinked, then shut down. We stood there, surrounded by smoke, glowing embers, blood, and scorched bones. Kowalski finally said, "That's how you delete a species' confidence." The blast didn't just kill the queen. It sent shockwaves through the entire hive network, chemical, electromagnetic, and whatever psychic spaghetti held their brains together. Fitz's sensors spiked so hard they started melting. Above ground, the jungle went quiet. Bird things stopped shrieking. Insect swarms dropped midair like someone flipped a kill switch. The cracked froze. Then came the convulsions. We watched through tunnel vents as entire colonies spasmed. Drones clawing at their heads, turning on each other, falling over dead with no visible wounds. No orders, no mind. Kowalski watched one drone headbutt a tree until it bled out. "Man, I almost feel bad." Jenkins replied, "Don't. That bastard ate my rations on week 2. Ramirez lit a cigar from the still burning hive wall and added, "Hell, I feel great." Command finally called in. Took them hours. We thought it was another threat until we got a voice on the long wave. "Unidentified squad, identify your location and status." Fitz grabbed the mic and said, "This is Fort Kickass, stat loud and victorious." Silence. "Then repeat that, soldier." Fitz didn't. He just switched the frequency to open channel and replayed our broadcast over the whole damn sector. Within hours, other squads started pushing forward, inspired, angry, alive. They called it the Kick-Ass Surge. No one made it official, but we didn't need medals. The story had legs now. It spread like wildfire through the human networks. Every cracked nest that heard the signal started to unravel. Not just tactically, but spiritually. We'd cracked their mythos, their structure. They weren't unbeatable anymore. We weren't a species to them anymore. We were a plague. You spent the rest of the week helping mop up half the time. We didn't even need to fight, just showing up. Mud-covered, bleeding, smirking like devils was enough to send them scattering. At one point, we passed a small cracked outpost. They didn't attack. They lit their own hive on fire and walked into it. I wish I could say I felt sorry, but all I felt was pride. You don't squat in a grave you made yourself, no matter how many bugs you buried in it. Command sent in a cleanup team, real professionals this time, biohazard suits, drones, medics, analysts who wouldn't last 2 minutes in a tunnel without pissing themselves. They looked at our hive fort and blinked like they were staring at a war crime wrapped in duct tape. Probably were. One of them asked Ramirez how long we'd been down there. He just shrugged, long enough to stop asking for permission. We handed over what was left of our logs, Fitz's scent bomb notes, tunnel maps burned into metal plates, a cracked fang we'd carved into a bottle opener. They didn't ask for the shovel. Jenkins kept that. We watched the professionals set up perimeter fences, scanning gear, automated turrets. A full base, top to bottom. It looked sterile, controlled, soulless. They were trying to understand what happened here. They didn't get it. You can't put this in a debrief. You can't capture the smell of melted queen flesh or the feeling of stabbing something older than your species with a kitchen utensil. We were ghosts by then, covered in mud, scars, and jokes no one outside the unit would ever understand. The cracked stopped attacking the sector entirely. For the first time in 15 years, that grid went cold. Peace by annihilation, not just military defeat, but psychological collapse. We did that. And when we walked back into the evac zone, not a single officer said a damn word. Just that quiet look you give someone who did the impossible and somehow came back in one piece. We left Fort Kickass behind, but the legend, that stayed. The cracked were born into war. Bred with carapace armor, acid spit, telepathic coordination, and hive loyalty hardwired deeper than DNA. Every drone knew its place. Every queen ruled like a god. Their biology was strategy, their instincts, brute. Us, we're barely organized mammals who wear dead trees on our feet and argue about coffee more than tactics, and yet we won. We won because no one taught us how to quit. No queen told us when to fall back. No pheromone trail told us which way to run. We made it all up as we went. Improvised, adapted, bled, cursed, laughed, and somehow turned our own brokenness into a strength. You don't beat humans with logic. You sure as hell don't beat a squad that duct-taped a flamethrower to a mop and called it Plan B. Command never fully debriefed us. They didn't need to. The results were loud enough. The crack retreated from 3 adjacent sectors in under a week. Their hives collapsed in on themselves, queens self-terminating, tunnels imploding, drones going feral or dying in place. The analyst called it cognitive disruption through cultural contamination. We called it doing our job too well. They tried to study us afterward. Fit our actions into charts and simulations. They couldn't. Every model predicted our deaths. Every scenario ran the numbers and concluded we'd lose 20-1. We weren't made to win. We just refused to lose. And that broke the rules the cracked had written for the universe. Soon every recruit knew about Fort Kickass, knew that somewhere a group of filthy, half-mad humans had cracked the uncrackable. We heard the stories ourselves. Once, while riding a transport near the outer belt, a green recruit sitting across from me started telling a story about a ghost squad in the bogs. He said they hunted queens and didn't take prisoners. Said they were part myth, part monster, and left messages burned into bone. I didn't say anything. I just smiled, pulled my knife from my boot, and cleaned my nails with it. His eyes went wide. Fitz leaned over and whispered, "It's always fun when they realize." Now, years later, the cracked haven't fully come back. Oh, they try. Little incursions, scout flares on the edge of space, but nothing organized, nothing like before. Whatever broke down in that hive, it never stitched itself back together. The fire we started, it's still burning. And every time some alien species asks what humans bring to the galaxy, they never list strength, speed, or tech. They just say, don't make them angry. Don't make a religion out of it.